All right, we'll have a look at some of these examples. Here's one from your textbook. This is from Jack Rayner Plus in chapter 14. There's the sections 14.4, the histograms and frequency polygons. This takes you through the setting out, etc. These axes are nicely labelled, frequency on the vertical, scores, in this case, test results on the horizontal. And there they've given the value. The columns are centered over the midpoint of the group. Here's another example here. This is continuous data. Results is probably discrete, wouldn't it? That'd be discrete, but notice the columns are still touching because it's group data. It's just better form that way. Okay, actually, that may not be group data. Now I'm thinking about it. But here we have the weight, and here they've labelled it with the lower and upper bounds of each group, which is possibly one. Well, some people say it's a preferred method. Okay, again, you've got axis in the vertical, the frequency, and on the horizontal, the score, which is in this case the mass. And here's number of hours watching television. Here they've labelled each column with the midpoint value. So in calculating the midpoint, it takes you through the method of doing that. Here you take the lower bound. Here, midpoint is calculated by taking the average of the two extremes. So take a lower bound and an upper bound and add them together and divide by 2. So this would be 5 to 10 there by the looks of it. So 5 plus 10 is 15, divided by 2 is 7.5. And then your class width is 5. So you're just adding your class width on to get the midpoint of each one as you go. All right. So polygons, the frequency polygon is simply drawn as so. It's just self-explanatory there by observing that illustration. Another example here we have the, this is from Southern Cross University. You can see here how they've set out their tables. Don't worry about the relative frequency column or the cumulative frequency. We won't be doing that. But here you've got your groups here and the group boundaries and your frequencies and the midpoint of calculated. Don't worry about that relative frequency. Okay, the midpoint's good not just for the optional labeling of the columns, but it's also very useful, well, essential for estimating your means from a group frequency distribution table. All right, so that's Southern Cross University. You might be able to see that URL up there. All right, it's a statistics PDF. And if I just go down a little bit, let's have a look at what they've produced. So here's a frequency column graph. They've got the two labels here. Here's the label they said that Excel had produced from the midpoint. Here's the one they prefer, showing the lower and the upper bounds. And there's the polygon separated from the frequency column graph. I actually prefer, if my x-axis data, the score data is starting from 0, I prefer to have that right back on the vertical axis, even if it means I draw a column overlapping part of that vertical axis. But so you have a choice there. Actually, you can leave a break if you like, but I prefer to have the 0 on the horizontal starting where the 0 on the vertical does. So let's get started. Let's see if we can do something with our spreadsheet here. Now, I've already drawn this one up, so let's see how I did it. I'll take these scores, these raw scores, and so this is what you would have. I'll put it in the new sheet there. Let's just paste it in there. I'm going to get a copy of that. I'll just Control-C and Control-V, because what I'll do is I'm going to sort this one, and I just want to keep a copy of the original. in case I mess things up with that. So if you look here on your home button, you've got sort and everything. If this ribbon isn't visible on Excel, just go into view and it should pop up and you can pin it so that it remains visible. So if I do a sort here, let's select home again, sort smallest to largest. If that dialog will come up if you've got more than one column, just continue with the current selection because I don't want to interfere with that other column. Okay, and then from that we can put them in groups. So what I had before, I had 0 to less than 20. See, even if you go, this person's just dropping out, obviously. So you've had 3 scores there. I mean, ideally you have at least 4, but we'll live with this. So this is 20 to less than 30. And the reason why I start from 0 is because it could be a 0. So if I start from 0, I go up to less than 20 rather than start from 1 and go up to less than 21. I'd like to start from 0 if 0 is a possible score to less than 40. So we've got low numbers in the first and last classes, so probably fairly even distribution here. Not symmetrical, but fairly even. I'm just going to format some of this stuff here. This data. If you go under alignment, it just depends on the situation, but I'll go right and I'll indent it by 1. 1 is, I think, 1 character. I'm not really sure. It didn't work for that one, so let's try it. That almost works. That'll do. You can wrap the text here if you like. Wrap text. All right. So what I'll do, I'll start the frequency distribution table. So this group data, let's give a space there so we can try not to get confused. So here I'll just put these in the columns in order because we're going to do a frequency of them. So fixed rule about what goes first, frequency. So what I'm going to put in here is a midpoint. I'll put the midpoint next, actually. Whoops, go back. I've got my control key down. I'm going all over the place there. Center that again. So I'll make this the midpoint because at some point I do want to work out the mean from the frequency table. So that's why I need the midpoint. And also it's an option for the labeling of the columns. So let's go have a look at what I got here. So in the first one, frequency is 3. And the next 22 less than, just highlight that. So that's 4. 30 to less than 40. Let's highlight that again. So that's 6. Fairly even distribution. 40 to less than 50. Let's go back to this one. That's a 5. Yeah, that's very. I think you'd call this a normal distribution, a rough. Just format this again. Right. All right. Now we need the midpoint there. So you can define it how you want. I'm saying I'm going to 19.99 or whatever. So I'm just going to say it's 0 plus 20 divided by 2. In other words, 10. But some people might argue, well, you're going to be rounding, so you're going from negative 0.5 up to 19.5 and blah, blah, blah. And then in which case you'll get half of 19, which is 9.5. But I'm quite happy with just calling it 10, the halfway mark. The column width is 10, so it's going up by 10 each time. What have I done here? 10, that's going up to, oh, well, I see what I've done. I've got 20 to less than 30. Sorry, 30 to less than 40. Okay. So the first one's gone up, has a column width of 20. All right. Let's smooth this down. Okay. So that means I've got to do 0 and then just an apostrophe here so it knows I am talking about a number. 0 to less than 20. So what I want to do is get the labels on these to cover two columns at the same time. It'll become clearer in a minute. So that means this is 25, 35, 45, 55. Right, that's the halfway. Okay, frequencies. What I'll do is I'll graph this now and we'll have a look at it. But just before I do, let's just get the sum of these, automatic sum. I want this to include that one. 21. Let's just go back and check my scores here. I'll even go to the original ones. And there we have 1 from 22 is 21. So that's 21 scores there. So my total frequency is correct. Now let's just see what we'll do here. I'm going to highlight these frequencies to help me with this graph. I'm going to go into recommended charts and I can see now it's captured those frequencies for the vertical axis, which is what I want. The horizontal axis isn't what I want, so they just ordered those columns, but I'll accept that for the moment. Now, I'll go ahead, I'll format this. I'll change select the data for the horizontal axis, edit, data lay. I'm going to hit that button there, which is asking for a selection. And what I want is this label, this length of labels here. That should do it. Okay. Let's see. Looks like it's going to come out all right. Right. Now we're going to talk about this vacant one in a minute, but let's format these for a minute. Format the data series. Over here, you'll see it's got a gap width. I don't know why it defaults to 219%. I haven't worked that out, but we just want 0 because we want it touching. This is continuous data, and these columns should be touching. And before I even release that, I'm going in to the outline, and I'm going to make the outline white, and that'll give us a nice separation of the columns. Otherwise, it's all one blue mass. Now, this just isn't right, is it? Because I could have put down what this was. This was 1 here in the 0 to less than 10, and it was 2 here. But because it's these are such small numbers, I've combined them to go across those two cells. So it's a bit, that would be fine. You could do that, but I was trying to average them across. So to average them across, it's 3 in both, so it's got to be 1.5 there across the two of them. Notice the total frequency is still the same. It's just a statistics thing when you're getting numbers as low as 1 and 2 in a group data. Try and merge them if you can. Now, if you look over here, these elements, you've got axis titles, primary, horizontal. Let's do that one. Call that group data. What is it? Hours. Group data. hours of study. Horizontal axis, axis titles, vertical I mean. So this is frequency. It's hard to think of an example where it won't be frequency in a frequency column graph or histogram, unless it's cumulative frequency for a cumulative frequency histogram. Okay, and then the title, I'll call this weekly hours of study for a sample of 21, I think it was, students. All right, don't worry too much about this spreading across the cells. You'd be fine if you just hit 1 and 2 for what we need to do at our level in grade 9. All right. Let's have a look at another example here. This is some really quite spread out numbers. If I just take the raw, I've done the same thing as I did before. I had the raw scores and then I sorted them, copied them, and then I sorted them. There's a blank there in that class data. So the number of scores, that was 51, 1 from 51, so there's 50 scores, and you can see I've done a total here. Sum I12 to I2 to I9. That's my total there. I've got 50. So I've got them all accounted for, but you see I've put a column in here with the class width because it was getting a bit scraggly. I wasn't sure what was going on. And I'm still not happy because this column over here is 25 to 35. That should really cover the equivalent of 2 of the other columns. So I think I'll fix that up now. What I'll do is I'll move this. I'll Control X and move it. Just check that my sum it's still okay. It's gone down to I10, so that's fine. 25. So I'm going to make this 25 and this to less than 35. So that covers, that'll span 2 columns there. And there's the last 2 rows. There's only 3 scores here. 40, and I go down here. This is 40 to 45, that one there. And that one's 45 to 50. So really, I'm talking about, it's really 35 plus. 35 plus. And look, it's even, this is just a statistical device, but I wouldn't take up 3 columns here, even that 48, that outrider there. I think I'll just occupy, even though there's 3 columns of width of 5 there, I'm just going to take up 2 columns. I've got to average it, so we've got a total 3 there, 1.5 and 1.5, and that spreads that over. I've still got that same total frequency, and look, that's still representative of the data without what you might say isolating respondents into a particular category. It's just a statistical device about the total number of column widths. So I think that's all right like that. But again, in grade 9, you don't have to worry about too many details here. But when you've got an ugly distribution of data like that, it does make things difficult. Obviously, this is a positive skew, and this big gap here is a bit of a worry. I could even possibly spread this across all 4 of those columns, maybe even better. So that would be 3 divided by 4, so it'd be like 3/4 for each of these. And wait, 7, 5. All right, same total frequency there, you see? All right, so that's another way of presenting it.